Hello, and welcome to the Film School Snobs. I'm Alex,
And I'm Jalen.
and welcome back to a Spike Lee joint part two.
Woohoo!
Jalen, how have you been doing?
I've been doing good considering everything going on in the world now. How about you?
I've been doing okay. I'm surviving. I'm holding on in there.
Spike Lee was able to comfort you and give you some answers.
A little bit. There was one movie I had to watch this week that did not comfort me. Um, but we'll talk about that later. So for now, let's move on into some movie news. Not really much happened in the past week, mainly because the world's just like in chaos over the Black Lives Matter movement and the coronavirus pandemic.
Mhm.
Um, the one big piece of news is that Ari Aster's next movie is going to be a 4 hour long nightmare comedy.
Jesus.
I know, like it's like, does anybody know how to make short movies anymore? Like,
Nah, that's so 2010s, Alex. We're in a new decade now. We got to have 4 hour epics for
oh
some
god,
reason.
I mean, I if this was 2010, I wouldn't be complaining because I had like a lot more free time on my hand, and
Hmm.
but yeah, long movies are hard to sit through. I mean, a lot of them are great. Like Irishman last year was great. Endgame was
Hmm.
really good. Um, but yeah, geez, 4 hours.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking too? Because the last past decade, we've been seeing like the rise of streaming services and different series coming out. And those are like 10 plus hours, and people, it's been a big debate of, well, what's better, going into the movies and watching a 2 hour movie, or sitting at home watching 10 hours with your favorite characters. So it
Mm.
seems like a lot of directors these days are trying to chase after that whole, well, let's spend more time with these characters, more time to develop them, rather than just quickly going through a 2 hour arc.
Mm.
But either way, with this guy, I mean, his last three movies are amazing, so I'll check out this one for sure.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. Ari Aster is like one of our most like talented horror directors. Granted, he said after Midsummer he didn't want to do horror movies anymore.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm interested in seeing like how he explores other genres, especially like the comedy genre. Because Midsummer was like a movie that like a lot of people praised for like it's very subtle humor.
Right.
And so let's see how he does with like a nightmare comedy.
It's funny too. He's kind of doing like the opposite Edgar Wright, because Edgar Wright, he's been doing mostly comedies, and now his new film, it's a psychological thriller or horror, I believe.
Hmm.
So they're kind of doing like the little flip flop here. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. And we got a trailer for an HBO series called Lovecraft Country.
Hmm.
Jalen, what were your thoughts on this trailer? Or do you know anything about the book it's based on?
I have no clue about the book it's based on. I just saw the trailer here. Well, can you tell us a little bit about the book? Or have you read the book at
So I
least?
haven't read the book. I've heard about it, and basically, so if you know who H.P. Lovecraft is, he's a very famous horror writer who created cosmic horror, and his whole base thesis was that when humans begin to explore the cosmos, we really go crazy because it's just stuff you don't comprehend or understand, and that the universe just doesn't care about humanity. But he was like a very influential horror writer that influenced people like Stephen King. But the thing is, he was very racist. Especially if you read Call of Cthulhu, which is one of his more famous stories.
I know
It's like
Cthulhu.
Call of Cthulhu. It's like littered with like a bunch of like racist slurs and stereotypes and stuff. And
Oof.
so Lovecraft Country is like one of those books that like took a lot of like H.P. Lovecraft's ideas and reimagined them for the 21st century and like really put to question his racist beliefs. Another book that does the same thing that I've read that I recommend is The Ballad of Black Tom, which is like very similar. Even has Cthulhu in it.
That's interesting. I gotta check those out. I mean, based on what I saw with this trailer, it definitely seems like it's something out there. Um, I like the whole setting of it. First of all, it seems like it's taking place in the Jim Crow era, so anything like dealing with that, it's always gonna pique my interest. But yeah, overall, I like the whole atmosphere of it. This is a Monkey Paw production too, right?
Yeah, it's being produced by J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, so yeah, they got some talent behind it, so I'm interested in it.
Yeah, along with Jordan Peele producing it, who's like we talked about this last episode, but he directed like two of the best horror movies of the last decade.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this. Especially because like I mean I really appreciate Lovecraft as a horror writer, but I don't agree with his views on race at all. And so I look forward to when, like, people of color take his stories and take his themes and just like reinterpret them in their own way.
Right, right. Well, hopefully, I'm sure it'll work out. HBO, of course, they put out a bunch of bangers, so I don't
Mhm.
see why this will be any different.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It looks really interesting. And from there, let's move on to the main topic of this week. Talking about Spike Lee joints for our second week before The Five Bloods come out on Netflix next week. Um, so we'll start. We're just going to talk about some of his newer movies since last week we talked about some of his classics. And you can't talk about a director without talking about some of their bad movies because sometimes it just it goes to show like their biggest faults as a director. So I'm going to talk about The Sweet Blood of Jesus because somebody here fell asleep while watching it.
Who did that?
Jalen, come on, man. I don't blame you because this movie's boring, like so incredibly boring.
uh, I will say, because I haven't finished the movie myself, I don't want to criticize the movie without finishing it. But for some few positives, I do respect that Spike was able to fund the movie through Kickstarter himself, and that he just made a movie with his vision in mind, with no cares apparently what anybody else said. So I'll let you take the reins for this one, but yeah.
Yeah, I very much respect that he funded this movie through Kickstarter, and yeah, he did do what he wanted to do. It's just I don't know what the movie is going for. Maybe because I was like going in and out of paying attention sometimes because like it was just really boring. It's just like it's an incredibly slow paced movie,
Yeah.
um, and the acting doesn't help it at all. It's very stilted, and I don't know. It feels so immature in terms of like acting, and yeah, that's like the biggest problem with like trying to watch this movie. Just because like I don't know, none of these actors are like famous actors. So I don't know how long they've been in the business.
Mm-hmm.
The most recognizable person in this movie is Rami Malek. And Rami Malek is like a very good actor. I feel like he's definitely the one who sticks out, who like definitely understands like the tone this movie's going for.
Right.
Um, but otherwise, just like especially the main actor, the one who plays Hess, um, yeah, he's just very stilted, very robotic, and it was hard to get invested in this movie because of the acting, and also just like a lot of it feels like this movie's missing a lot of pieces to it. Like I don't understand some character motivations at times, um, and I'm not sure what the movie was going for in terms of like its message it was trying to give out because it just seems like it's a movie about a rich dude who becomes a vampire and continues to kill people and drink blood. And other than that, there's really not even like the way it ends very anticlimactically with no real point to it.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that I haven't seen all of Spike Lee's movies, but out of the ones I have seen, this will definitely go down as my least favorite of his. And it doesn't seem like anything he's made before. Like it just seems so lifeless compared to something like Black Klansman or Do the Right Thing, Chi-Raq, just like a lot of his other movies. So yeah, this isn't one I would recommend. This isn't one I'm gonna watch again. Um, yeah, so it's really not a film I have a lot to say on because it's just I don't think the movie has a lot going for it.
Now, when you say that the film was lifeless, do you mean that particularly just with like, the storytelling of it and the acting, or more so on the filmmaking craft of it? Like, was his shots, you felt that was still pretty wonky too?
Yeah, even the way it was shot, it was just it felt very bland. Nothing about like the compositions or Lee's camera work really um, caught my eye. There is like the one shot that you see throughout his like entire filmography of like the person just like standing still while like the camera moves, like it does like this dolly zoom.
Yeah, yeah.
That was like recognizable with like any Spike Lee movie.
Hmm.
And then there's like this one cool transition I noticed that I thought was really neat. Otherwise, like not much of the camera work was all that interesting to me. It doesn't like really pop out to me.
That's a shame. But I mean, when you have a career like Spike Lee's, I think you can afford one or two duds.
Mhm. Yeah. I think the only thing that could like taint Spike Lee for me is if I ever watched that Old Boy remake because I still haven't seen the
Yeah.
remake, but I love the original.
Yeah. Actually, I will say, I guess we should have talked about that one instead, because I actually did see that one, and of course, the original is just way better. But I didn't actually mind the new one, his version of it.
All right, tell me, like, why is it better than most people say it is? Like, why is it not as bad as some say it is?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I know it's kind of like the cop out answer, but it is really just an enjoyable B action movie, you know. And yeah, no, that's from the original Old Boy. I mean, you just have such iconic scenes. Like, I mean, the hallway fight scene in itself, it's just amazing. But I mean, with Spike Lee's version, I mean, not really much I can say about it other than I just enjoyed it as a B grade action film. I guess in the same way of like, I don't know, what's the first movie that comes to mind, like Equalizer or something like that.
Hmm.
So it's, you know, you get to see people get beat up for like 2 hours. So yeah, I don't think I think it's kind of similar in the way of his film craft that you were saying for the Sweet Blood of Jesus. That nothing too remarkable stands out in it, but for a studio film, I think he was able to at least add in his voice into it, as far as just like how. Well, I guess we said this last week too, how in your face Spike Lee is.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would actually, if you get the chance, I would say check it out.
Definitely. I will say one thing that I read up on, and like looking at the remake versus the original, was that so Old Boy is like very steeped in like Korean culture because obviously it's a Korean made film.
Hmm.
And so the reason why the hallway fight is the way it is with like hammers and pieces of wood and just like basically like the guy had to like fight his way through with his fist. And the original is because Korea has like a very strict like gun regulation. Unlike
Hmm.
America, where everybody just goes out. That's why American action movies are all about like going out guns blazing because like
Right.
Americans love their guns. Um, but in Korea, it's like very different. And so I know I've seen the hallway fight on like YouTube. I've seen how like that's orchestrated and stuff, and it's interesting to see that translate over because well, you could just have that with guns because that's the American system. Like American mafias and American crime bosses like all carry guns, whereas in
Right.
Korea, like that's different. So it's just like one of those interesting translations where if you're going to remake something from another country, then why not Americanize it a little bit more, like have it reflect more American culture.
Right. And I mean, you know, we've been seeing this in the history of cinema. I mean, when you look at samurai movies versus Western films, you know, they tell the same stories, just culturally different. But
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, America, we do love our guns. That's why we promote the military in commercials so much and try to recruit people at a young age. But they do make fun action films. I will say that.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, listen, I'm very much against guns, but I love me some John Wick. Every time he shoots a guy from a horse, I'm like, yeah, go John Wick, but take away his gun.
Yeah, I really want to know. I mean, this is off topic, but they really need to delve deeper into the lore because of John Wick. Because I haven't seen a single cop in that movie at all.
Oh, there is the one cop, the one who goes to his house and
Oh, the
says,
first,
"You
right?
working again?"
Oh, right, right. All right, I take that back. I remember that now. So they probably have like their own deal under the table because John Wick will probably smoke the whole department.
Oh, most likely. Listen, I will say I did see a picture of Keanu Reeves at a Black Lives Matter protest, so we definitely don't want to mess with John Wick. You saw what he did over a dog.
I mean, listen, man, Keanu's great, but John Wick, he'll kill you in a heartbeat.
Moving on to more Spike Lee movies. Let's talk about one we both watched and that we didn't fall asleep trying to watch. Um, Chi-Raq. That's a movie that came out 5 years ago in 2015. Stars Samuel L. Jackson and Nick Cannon. John Cusack was in there, which surprised me.
Hmm.
Um, and basically, what it's about, it's such a unique premise, and I love it. So basically, it's based off a Greek play, and all the women in the world decide that they've gone celibate, that they're not going to have sex anymore until the men make a vow of peace worldwide. It starts off in the city of Chicago, or as they call it, Chirac, and then somehow, some way, it just blows up across the world. Jalen, what are your thoughts on this movie?
Yeah, so when I first saw this film, I know it came out in 2015. So I was still in high school, and I think I said this last week, but I've always been a big fan of Spike Lee since I was a young kid. But this one confused me because I didn't know anything about the whole based on a Greek play or anything like that. So I was watching, I was like, what the hell? Why are they talking like they're spitting a freestyle? This is stupid. So having rewatched the movie earlier today, you know, I have a better appreciation for that. Not that I, read Greek plays like that now, but knowing the backstory with all that, I think Spike Lee, he was able to incorporate, those influences into this film and put it into Black culture like how he did here. I know a lot of people had a lot of issues because obviously Spike Lee's a New Yorker. He's making a movie about Chicago, Chi-Raq, but honestly, I think he treats it with such love and respect that it's kind of baffles me. It's like, how can anybody hate this, really?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a movie with a lot to love about it. I mean, even going to like the opening of the movie, it opens with the 4 minute rap by Nick Cannon called "Pray for My City," which is like kind of how like Spike Lee like really he loves to open up his films with like musical numbers. Do the Right Thing opens up with Rosie Perez like dancing to "Fight the Power." Even the Sweet Blood of Jesus opens up with a dude dancing to, like this like classical piano number, which was like
Right.
made no
That's right.
sense. But we're done talking about that movie. Um, But yeah, he opens up with like this powerful music number. It's literally just like lyrics on the screen while Nick Cannon's rapping. And it's really interesting how like Spike Lee really incorporates like hip hop and music into like his films, and it was like make a very powerful statement.
Hmm.
And then you go into like the rest of the movie, and I knew what the premise was like going in. I've known about the premise of this movie for a while now, and I finally watched it for the first time the other day. And I didn't expect it to go as like ridiculous as it went, as big as it went. Because by the time you get to the movie and they're like, "We solved violence, we ended violence," it's like, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, no, because and it is interesting because the solution falls in the hands of Black women and sex, which is something Spike Lee, I don't think he gets enough credit for, but his whole filmography, he really does. And no, I don't want to sound like a broken record. We talked about this last week, but he really does empower the Black women. I mean, just to show like, oh, this is how much power that they have over these men, killing each other senselessly.
Mhm.
We could hold out from sex and we could solve violence. I mean, on paper it sounds ridiculous, but I don't know. There might be some truth to that.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's very empowering to them because it's saying that like you do also have a voice. It's like a lot of the times we do live in a very patriarchal society where
Mm,
we're now like starting to like pull down the shambles, but we still have a long way to go in that. And so yeah, I could see the purpose in something like this, like giving those Black women that voice, saying, hey, you can make a change too. It's not just it doesn't just fall on the men to like end the violence. And if you do leave it to the men, they're probably just going to want to perpetuate more violence.
right. Yeah, no, it's honestly like I said, like Spike Lee, he handles a lot of these themes in his film and a lot of his statements in this film with such delicate care, I think. And it's like I think only Spike Lee could have made this movie like this.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with such a great ensemble cast. I mean, yeah, you have Nick Cannon and Wesley Snipes, but then you also get like appearances from Samuel L. Jackson and Angela Bassett. Dave Chappelle, who had like my favorite scene in the entire film with the whole strip club thing. I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was just a very enjoyable movie with a lot to say about it.
Yeah. Yeah, because like it definitely even goes like bigger than just violence. It definitely delves into like the systematic racism that's built within this country. And it really just like wants like it's a movie saying, hey, we gotta tear down the whole system, which like is very relevant now because like the system we're having clearly isn't working for us. And we're even seeing like big moves to defund and dismantle police departments. And to, like replace them with something that's for the betterment of the community.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so it's interesting how like Spike Lee just like throughout his career has like made stuff that's like very relevant to the times, or like this movie is only 5 years old, but even before this, he was making movies like that were still relevant to what's going on today.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, speaking of just like the whole systemic thing, there was a great scene in here with Angela Bassett where he had the insurance dude coming over and telling her like, oh, you might want to file for life insurance for your son, for your sister's son, before anything happens to him.
Mm,
It's just like, yeah, you have these greedy corporations and businesses profiting off of, young Black boys' deaths and, their little bodies laying in the streets. It's upsetting, but it's just like, it is something you have to change from, within.
Definitely. I feel like that one of my biggest problems with the movie is that for like a lot of it, it can definitely seem very scattershot. Where
Mm.
like it has like really great scenes like that, where it's like really grounded and in like this motion of like feeling like the system's built against you.
Right.
But then it just like goes like completely off the wall absurdist comedy. And a lot of the times it does seem like it's playing this like big juggling act between the two of like trying to make this big bold statement while also trying to just be a funny movie. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Jalen?
I think that's like a common problem with you're trying to create a satire. Um, you do have to find. You're right. You do have to find that balance of, well, it has to be funny, but you also have to make a serious statement about it. It didn't really bother me that much, just because I was just rolling with the film, having a good time with it. I will say my least favorite aspect of it, which probably gonna get a lot of haters on this, but I didn't really think. I think Nick Cannon was miscast in this, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think if it was literally anybody else, a lot of these lines that he was delivering specifically could have been delivered to, tread that line clearly. That it's a satire, you know. Not that he was bad in this, but I don't really think Nick Cannon is a strong actor per se.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the interesting thing that I did read up on is that actually Kanye West, he was originally supposed to do this role, but then he dropped out.
That's
I
interesting.
don't know.
Kanye West as an actor,
Yeah.
he really hasn't had much of an acting career. Like not
No,
at all. Now that I think about it.
no, he literally the only thing I've seen him in was like an episode of Entourage, or not even like a scene in Entourage where he literally played himself, and I don't think
Yeah.
he did a job at that. So can't say that would have made the movie better, but I think because I don't know, like Nick Cannon's character, him playing the main dude, I didn't really feel much for him. I don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe Kanye would have provided something different.
But can you just like imagine Kanye West being in this movie, and then like a couple years later, you see him with Trump, and it's just like, bro, really?
Listen, I feel like that now. I mean, when I was growing up in middle school, I mean, in elementary school, I saw Kanye, the dude that said George Bush doesn't care about black people, and
Mm.
now he's playing golf with Trump. And I don't know, it's bizarre.
It really is, especially like
Yeah.
if you like really listen into like his first couple albums. And I love old Kanye. You know, I thought like his very first like couple albums were really great.
Mm,
And especially like what he talks about. And now it's like, yeah, me and Trump were buddies.
yeah.
You know, up until like he starts selling less Yeezys, then he's like, oh well, I don't know about that.
Yeah, yeah. Because I agree with you. Like College Dropout and Late Registration, some of my favorite albums, and I even like Dark Twisted Fantasy. But yeah, his newer stuff, it's like I can't really relate to him. And tying it back, it's like that's a dude that grew up in Chicago. He's seen the horrors of it, so I think he probably would have had like a better relate. You could relate to him, his character better if he was casted in this film. But yeah, I don't know. I don't buy him as an actor.
Yeah. And from there we move on to Spike Lee's latest movie before the Five Bloods, Black Klansman, which was I feel like kind of a return to form. Like that was like the consensus for this film. Because
Mm.
Chi-Raq definitely got a lot of praise, but I feel like Black Klansman like also put like Spike Lee back in like the mainstream spotlight.
They got
Um,
Oscar.
oh yeah, it even got an Oscar. Where Spike Lee gave the very controversial speech where he said, "Do the right thing," and President Trump said, "That's racist."
What a dummy.
I know. Um, But yeah, I even talked about this last week where I said that like the ending of Black Klansman by showing the Charlottesville riots kind of parallels the beginning of Malcolm X where they show the Rodney King murder. And it's just like Spike Lee like trying to draw those parallels from what's going on now and what went on like back in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Bringing in a contemporary view into it shows, like we were talking about, not much has changed at all.
Mm-hmm. So Jalen, what are your thoughts on Black Klansman?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know if we talked about this on the show before, but I absolutely love this film. 2018, it was in my top five, I think maybe. Um, yeah, just I don't know if I want to say it's a return to form for Spike Lee. I mean, I know that's the general consensus, but for me, it's like I love Chi-Raq, and yeah, I don't think he's ever really like fallen off per se. But this was definitely the film where I looked at it and I was like, yeah, Spike Lee, he's really like top tier A-list director. Um, and it was cool too. Like there was a movie produced by Jordan Peele. You know, he's the one that gave the script to Spike Lee. So having that collaboration, first off, already is just like wow, history in the making. But yeah, just the whole premise of the film. John David Washington plays as a cop who infiltrates the Ku Klux Klan um, by impersonating a white guy and having his partner played by Adam Driver. You know, them playing essentially the same guy infiltrating this Klan. And yeah, it's a movie that I think it's funny, it's topical, and it's just well directed, well acted. I don't have enough nice things to say about this movie.
Yeah, it was definitely one of my favorites of the year it came out, 2018. And yeah, just like that's the one thing that like it's very topical, you know. It speaks to a lot to like the difficulties like people of color do face when they join the police department, and like how they're viewed by their coworkers and how they're viewed by other people of color. Um, which I found really interesting, and especially bring it into like the modern viewpoint. Like people do feel a certain type of way about like African Americans or Latinos like joining the police department, and especially with like how the system like kind of like really does persecute those people of those demographics. It's a very tough walk like those cops of color had to. It's a very tough line those cops of color had to walk.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you know, in some situations too, it's like a life or death situation. And something cool that I think the film even addressed nicely is that, you know, everybody likes to say with cops, it's like, oh, well, it's only, you know, a few bad apples. But this film, it even has like a segment to talk about, like, well, if it's only a few bad apples, then the majority of the police force should, you know, stick up and stand up and, you know, call those people out. And, you know, if they don't say anything, then they're all bad apples, you know?
Mhm. Now, I remember when this movie came out, there's a bit of controversy between Spike Lee and Boots Riley because Boots
Mm,
Riley put out like that same year he made Sorry to Bother You, which was another
yep,
great film.
that was my
Um,
number that year.
yeah, and I remember he put out a statement critiquing the film and saying that a lot of the film was kind of made up and reconfigured to kind of fit the film's message. The real life man, Ron Stallsworth, Boots Riley said that they did lie a lot in the film, especially when you compare it to the book, which I haven't read. One of the big ones was that one speech that Ron Stallsworth goes to at the beginning of the movie. The man saying the speech, I forget his name again, but he in the film he said that African Americans need to arm themselves and prepare for
Mm,
war. Whereas like in real life, that actual man, he said black people need to educate themselves. They need to focus more on their education and in order to like kind of prevail in the American system.
right.
And Bruce Riley just like really called out Spike Lee and said that you're idolizing Ron Stallsworth when in actuality he was someone who was okay with infiltrating black activist groups for the sake of the police department. What are your thoughts on that, Jalen?
Yeah, I've read up on this, and yeah, I think Boots Riley definitely does bring up a great point. Um, but I think one, I don't think Spike Lee really brushes over that fact because one of his first, well, actually his first assignment in the film is to infiltrate the uh, Black Student Union meeting that they were having. It does kind of like, you know, it doesn't really make a big deal about it because it wants to get to the more important aspect that he infiltrated the KKK, which I
Mm-hmm.
think should be a big takeaway from this. But yeah, I definitely do think Riley brings up a good point. We shouldn't, you know, should definitely research the man and see the bit of harm that he did bring to the black community in this country. But yeah, I don't think it's something Spike Lee was trying to like brush under the rug at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something I definitely agree with. Like he was mainly the main purpose of this movie was to really talk about like the white supremacist under circuit of this country and how that's still prevalent no matter what. Even if at the end of the movie they quote unquote defeat the Ku Klux Klan, and yet the Klan comes back and still burns a cross right outside Salsworth's apartment.
Mm,
And I feel like that was like the main statement Spike Lee was trying to make. He was trying to say that no matter what, white supremacy is still going to be prevalent in this country, and it's going to be an ongoing battle.
For sure. And I think the way that he did that too, I know a lot of people, my aunt specifically, she had issues on how the Klan members were portrayed as like goofballs. And
Mm.
she was like, she brought up an interesting point. She was like, no, it shouldn't, they shouldn't be caricatures. Klan members, they're very sophisticated men that, they get high positions in offices and whatnot. And she felt like the film didn't really address that. But I do think that like having Topher Grace, who plays as damn it, Duke, God damn it, what's his name again?
David Duke.
David Duke. Yeah, thank you. Um, Having him come in saying, America first, make America great again, that draws the parallel powers. Like, well, look who we have in office. It's people who idolize these same ideals. That's very harmful for the betterment of this country.
Mm. Yeah, and what are your thoughts on the ending too? When they draw that direct parallel between them burning the cross outside of Salesworth's apartment and the the Charlottesville riots. Because I know I had a friend who he said that as much as he loved the film, that like he thought the ending was too blunt and too on the nose. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest things, like we said about Spike Lee during this whole thing, is that he is very blunt. He's not someone to hold back. And that's like a take it or leave it thing with him. But for me personally, I really did love the fact that he did that. Only because one, I know the film when it came out. I believe it was like the 1 year anniversary, like the exact day of the 1 year anniversary of the Charlottesville riots that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So there was definitely that recency to it. I remember sitting in a theater, and it was a bunch of white people, but I glanced around and everybody was just watching in shock and horror. A lot of people had tears coming out of their eyes watching it. And I think I kind of understand why people might think like, well, it doesn't really fit. It feels like it's shoehorned into this entire film. But when you look at the entirety of what Spike Lee was trying to say with the film, that this is something systemic, that we have to root out the evils from who holds these positions in office. You can look at, it's like, yeah, nothing's changed at all. What was the year difference? Like 20, 30 years or so?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, everything is pretty much the same here. Not much has changed at all. People are still marching in 2020 now for basic human rights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I just remember my own experience watching the film in theaters. Just like first of all, the way that entire scene is shot, where Ron Stalsworth sees the cross outside his apartment, is like really powerful, and it's just like it gives you that feeling of like shock and horror. It's like, wow, I thought we defeated this. Turns out we didn't. And then it continues on as like that montage of what happened in Charlottesville. And I just kind of walked out of the theater really angry, which is like I imagine the feeling Spike Lee wanted to give his audience, like anger or shock or horror, and just something that like leaves such like a huge impression on you. It's like, wow, like this is still around, and like this is still scary.
For sure. Yeah, that's the thing with Spike Lee, like love him or hate him, but you're definitely getting passion out of his films. Something to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, so that's all for the Spike Lee marathon. Next week we'll be reviewing The Five Bloods once it hits Netflix. It's a movie we discussed it a little bit last week, but we're both definitely looking forward to it.
Right.
Because Spike Lee, good or bad, like he's always an interesting filmmaker, you know.
Sure.
From here, let's talk about what we've been watching over the past week. Things that we've seen that we want to talk about. Jalen, what have you seen?
So while I was busy not watching The Sweet Blood of Jesus, I decided to watch a B rom-com on Netflix that stars Issa Rae and I can never pronounce his name. Camille Nijabi?
I think it's Camille Nanjiani.
Nanjiani. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Listen,
yeah, sorry, we don't know how to pronounce your name. We're
listen,
too Americanized.
if you're listening, just know that I think you're really dope and super hilarious. And I think that's the one thing I could say about this film is that the both of them, they definitely work well together. I thought they were funny together.
Oh, what was the
Uh,
name of the film, by the way?
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, The Lovebirds. There's a movie from, I believe, Universal supposed to come out in theaters a few months ago, but obviously to the coronavirus, they had to shuffle it to Netflix. So essentially, what happens is you have a couple here. They've been together for about 4 years, and right when they hit a rut, they get entangled into this whole conspiracy, espionage type of thing, where somebody who impersonates a cop hijacks the car, hits somebody, and now they're blamed for that murder. And so now they spend the whole night trying to clear their name and trying to solve this whole mystery. Just even having me explain it, you can already tell, yeah, it's, B-list rom-com nonsense. You've probably seen this film 1,000 times before. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to say about it. It's just something to watch. It's on Netflix. It's an hour and 40 minutes. Definitely has some good laughs in there, at least in my taste. And yeah, like I said, Camille and Issa Rae, and that's actually the show I really want to talk about. Issa Rae's Insecure, that's on HBO. I've been watching that as well. But they definitely work very well together, like I said. I think they're funny, their chemistry is on point, their timing is on point. But yeah, the script and the storytelling doesn't really do it any favors. It's, yeah, run of the mill type of stuff.
Mhm. And you also said you wanted to talk about Insecure.
Yeah. So yeah, Insecure. That's Issa Rae's show. It's on Netflix. Sorry, I keep saying Netflix. It's on HBO. I believe it came out 2016. I know it's on season 4 now. So yeah, I think it's 2016. And yeah, I just got into it. I'm loving it so far. One thing, speaking of, I know there's kind of a common theme that we've talked about these past 2 weeks, but it's a show that does empower Black women. Issa Rae, she's this very awkward type of woman in this show. She's funny, but kind of nerdy, but she's just goes out there and does it without any care of what anybody around her says. It's a show that also kind of empowers like sexual expression and freedom. Because I mean, it's HBO, so there's a lot of sex on this show to the point where I had to actually start fast forwarding some scenes before my mother thought I was watching porn. Um, but yeah, it's a great show. It's a great show. I definitely highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's a show that my mom watches a lot and she praises a lot. So it's definitely something I've been looking into watching. Maybe it'll be my next binge watch. Who knows? Um, but yeah, I guess from there I'll start talking about what I've seen. I recently watched this movie for the first time on Disney Plus called The Rocketeer, directed by Joe Johnston, who directed the Captain America: The First Avenger and the first Jumanji movie. Um, and it's just like campy 90s fun, like it's the one thing. I wasn't around for the 90s, but I remember watching a lot of 90s movies growing up, and a lot of them were just like campy and wholesome, and it's like stuff that I miss. This is a movie about, it's basically Spider-Man Homecoming kind of. It takes place in the 1940s, and it's a young man who's a pilot, and he finds a jetpack that was made by Howard Hughes, and he uses the jetpack in order to fight crime and to make some money by flying and stuff, for like a airplane show. And just like the one thing I can really say about it is that it's just the characters are really likable. The main character, whose name is Cliff, he's just like a really charming dude. Um, and you also have what's his name? Neville Sinclair, played by Timothy Dalton, who's just like such a silly mustache twirling villain. He's an actor who wants the jetpack. They don't tell you why until the end of the film, and like when you get to the end, it's like, oh really, they're going there. Which is like you would expect it to go there because like it's a movie. Well, I guess I'll just spoil it. That actor is like a Nazi spy,
Oh,
and yeah, and it's just like it's like really campy, throwbacks like when Americans were the good guys, supposedly the good guys, and the Nazis were the bad guys, and so it's just like America versus the Nazis, and it's a lot of fun. It's campy, silly, fun movie.
oh, nice. What year did you say this came out?
It came out in 1991, so the very early 90s.
Oh, wow. Uh, I mean, it does sound fun. One thing I couldn't say about Joe Johnson, not that I'm like this huge expert on his whole filmography, but I don't think his style necessarily is anything that pops, but he definitely makes very enjoyable, entertaining movies.
Hmm. Without a doubt, like he just knows how to make like just really fun movies.
Hmm. I see you using that Disney Plus.
I use it like once in a blue moon. Um, And then I've also been watching. I finally started watching Bob's Burgers, which is already a couple years old. I think it came out in 2010, 2009. I could be wrong on that, but
It's
yeah.
around that.
What'd you say?
I think it was around that time, like 2010 or so, or 11.
Yeah. I recently learned it was the same voice actor who plays Archer, who plays
Yeah.
Bob. Which
Benjamin.
yeah, which I had no idea about. Basically what it's about this man who owns a burger restaurant and he has a really weird family. Um, just like that's the one thing that definitely sticks out about the show is like how really weird and wacky the kids are. You have Tina who's like currently going through puberty and is experiencing all the weird stuff that comes with it, um just very hyped up because it's a adult comedy show, so it's like 10 times more weirder. Um you have Gene, who's like this like preteen boy who's like obsessed with like a bunch of gross stuff. And then you have Louise, who's got to be my favorite character. She's just like she's an instigator. She loves to like instigate like all these like really bad situations. She's always like trying to make her family look bad. In the very first episode, because their restaurant is right next to a crematorium, she for show and tell she tells her classmates, "Oh, we serve human flesh in our burgers," and she definitely like gives off like the best jokes, and she's very violent for a little girl. Um, that's a girl you got to keep under watch.
Yeah, put her on the FBI watch list.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just overall a very enjoyable show. It's like definitely been like a comfort watch for me. Whereas like if I just need something funny, just like laugh at or something just to pass the time, Bob's Burger has been my go-to lately.
Yeah, that's dope, bud. Yeah, I've been a big fan of the show. I used to watch it like every Sunday night for animation domination. Used to be Simpsons, Bob's Burger, Family Guy, then American Dad. One thing I will say too is that I know they were supposed to have a movie coming out this summer, but I don't think that's happening at this point.
And Corona just keeps on ruining everything.
Everything, man.
Everything. But hopefully things get better sooner rather than later.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
I want that Bob's Burgers movie. And they said it was supposed to be musical.
It's supposed to be a musical. That's interesting. Yeah. And that's all for today's episode. Join us next week when we review The Five Bloods, Spike Lee's new joint. And Jalen, where can people find you online?
Yeah, you go follow me on Letterboxd, Jalen Michael, or see the stupid stuff I post on Reddit at jmike127.
You can find me on Twitter as Jedi Master Alex, and you can also find me on Letterboxd, Alexander Zapeta. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Later.